An anonymous SEC coach said what about South Carolina this year? Another day, another dabble in disrespect. We talk about it next. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Back again, back in a different location, back with a very scraggly beard, I feel like. But regardless, we are back, and I appreciate you guys being back as well. And shout out to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. You guys have heard me talk about Monarch Money before. You're going to hear me talk about them again. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We got a good show for you today. Let's get into it. What we're going to talk about, to start at least, is some anonymous quotes from SEC coaches around the SEC, like I said, and what they are thinking about this South Carolina team. And one quote specifically that just rubbed me all sorts of the wrong way. That sounded weird, but we'll start with that. We'll get into some other stuff that I think the media and other people are wrong about in general. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about some players and names that I don't think we're talking enough about. And we're going to start talking about them now. So let's get into it. All right. I got the Lindy's Sports. I got the Georgia one because I'm currently in Georgia. And they have the opposing coaches' view, the anonymous coaches, salacious quotes from other coaches. And this is the first thing I read. Gotta admire what's going on with modern day Beamer ball. But, and I mean this with all due respect, I don't think they're built for the back half of that schedule. It's brutal. I don't think any school could survive it, really. Let's say it again. I mean this with all due respect. I don't think they're built for the back half of this schedule. Let's start there. And I'm going to yell on this episode. So strap in. You know how I know you didn't mean it with all due respect? Because it was disrespectful. It was disrespectful. It's another day and another, like I said, dabbling in disrespect about South Carolina. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Here's the back half of the schedule for all those wondering, okay? Here's the back half of the schedule. They got Oklahoma, Alabama, at Ole Miss, week off, at A&M, Coastal Carolina, Clemson. Very difficult back half of the schedule. But if there's something you notice, there's one thing you notice in all that. Do you notice that it's the same teams as the year before? Almost the exact same teams year before. Let's go through this again. Oklahoma beat the brakes off them 35-9 in Norman last year. That's who you start with there, okay? Alabama lost to them by 2 in Bryant-Denny last year. Get both those games at home. Then you go on the road to Ole Miss, a team that lost a ton of NFL talent, and Jackson Dart at quarterback. All right, they're replacing a new quarterback, Austin Simmons, who I think will be good. I really do. I think he'll be good in this scheme with Lane Kiffin for sure. But he's 19. He's 19. He's never taken. I think he has 32 total career attempts at quarterback. Okay, and also let's be clear here. Ole Miss might be a good team this season. Going to Vaught Hemingway Stadium is not a difficult place to play. Vaught Hemingway Stadium is a Vineyard Vine store. Mannequins come to life. Everyone standing around in Patagonia vests. Like it is not a difficult place to play. It holds 62,000 people. They're out drinking champagne and crap under fake chandeliers in their in the Grove outside the stadium. Like it is the most pretentious. If you've ever been to Vaught Hemingway, people say you have to go. Most underwhelming experience I've ever had. But like and I went to college, okay? Most underwhelming experience I ever had. Actually, college is pretty cool, I'll be honest. But most underwhelming tailgating experience I've ever been to, okay? That's who you have third on there. Then you get a week off, then you go at A&M. Now, you have struggled mightily against A&M. And I think A&M is going to be really good this year. But then you have Coastal Carolina, and then you have Clemson. I'm just trying to remember last year, going into the last part of the season, okay? You had, let's see here, Oklahoma on the road, A&M at Vandy, Mizzou, Wofford, Clemson. 4 of those teams out of the 6 were ranked. Half of those games were on the road. You won every single one of them. This year's team is better than last year's team. Maybe Oklahoma is all of a sudden going to be great because they got a quarterback named John Mateer, and he played 1 game against a ranked opponent last year and 3 total against Power 4 opponents. So he's going to waltz into the SEC just like Oklahoma did last year and be a world beater at QB. Sure, he's going to be doing that behind the worst offensive line in the country. That's where they were a year ago, okay? Alabama is going to be really good this year. They were really good last year with a quarterback that was the highest returning Heisman Trophy vote getter in the country going into the season. That was Jalen Milroe. He was 6th overall in 2023. He's the highest returning one in 2024. What am I missing? You lost to him by 2. Now you get it at home. Ole Miss on the road. I'm saying it right now. I think that's a dub. At A&M, that is one that I have circled as a loss. And then Clemson. Clemson's going to be very, very tough. But the back half of the schedule, I say this over and over and over again when it comes to talking about the schedule in South Carolina. The schedule is the schedule. Bottom line, the schedule is the schedule. Like, it's always been tough. Georgia's not on it, right? I mean, think about how many years in a row you had to play Clemson and Georgia, especially in those 2010s after 2015. Like, you know, when Kirby got to Georgia and Dabo had it going at Clemson. Like, I mean, that's not on the schedule anymore. It's a tough schedule. It's always a tough schedule. It's always a tough schedule. This one feels more manageable than ever. The back half of the schedule, I don't know if they're good enough. Let me see this again. I don't think they're built for the back half of the schedule. I love it. I personally love it. It's going to be a very difficult year. And I do worry about trips to LSU, and I worry about that Clemson game. But the LSU game is in the front half of the schedule. The back half of the schedule, it's more difficult, I guess, than the front half. What do you have in the front half? Let's look at this real quick. Because keep in mind, again, going into last year in the second half, like you were an underdog against Oklahoma, underdog against A&M. Vanderbilt was ranked. You were an underdog against Mizzou. You were an underdog against Clemson. You won all 6 of those games. I don't know what success looks like this year for this year's team yet. We're obviously going to get into it as the season goes on. But, I mean, dude, you're talking about a situation where, like, you would have to lose against Coastal, which you're not going to do. Like, what are they? You expect them to go 2-4? I don't see any part of the schedule where they finish it without a winning record, or at least 500. Is 3-3 successful? I don't see them losing to Oklahoma. I don't see them losing to Ole Miss. I don't see them losing to Coastal Carolina. If you get a win against A&M or Clemson, which is very easy, it's not very easy, but very doable. I mean, this is not a team that like escaped with a win against A&M last year. It's a team that beat the brakes off of A&M by 24 points. It's also a team, when you look at it from last year to this year, how did they play on the road last year, right? Like going into this year or going into last season, Shane Beamer, I think, was like 2-10 or 3-9. I think he's 2-10 in road games in the SEC a year ago, going into 2024. Last year, you won at Kentucky 31-6. You barely lost Alabama by 2. You won at Oklahoma 35-9. You won at Vandy 28-7. And then you beat your arch rival Clemson on the road as well, 17-14. I'm looking at this right now, and you had 5 road games. You went 4-1 on the road. 4-1. You won those games. Let's just do some fun math here in those wins. 3, 24. Oh boy, this is gonna be a tough one. 24 and 26 is 50, plus 25, 75. So what's 75 divided by 4? 18.75. You won all of those games, all 4 of those games by 18.8 points per game. You didn't just win on the road. You won by 3 scores on average in those wins. So all of a sudden, The back half of the schedule is tough because you got to go to A&M. Same A&M that went, what, like 1-5 or 1-4 to close the year last year? The same A&M that you blew the doors off of when they were a top 10 team? What are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? It blows my mind. All right, listen. We're going to take a short break. I'm going to catch my breath. I'm going to try not to yell as much. I hope you guys are having a great day. I'm having a great day. I'll be honest with you. But before we go, I do want to tell you about a new sponsor we have, and it is a fun one. We are talking about our good friends. That's right. That's none other than Rougiette. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a new gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves right under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. I tell you what, if traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer, with over 150,000 men already making the switch. Head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for 15% off. Listen, individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. That's Rougiette, RUGIET. We'll be back with more on the disrespect from an anonymous coach South Carolina is getting going into the 2025 season. All right, we're back with more Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, from yet another new place. So here's the deal. It's not all disrespect that they have given South Carolina. Looking at some of the quotes from here, and listen, he did say with all due respect, but it reminds me of that quote from Ricky Bobby, right? From what's the movie? Talladega Nights, when he's like, and remember, I said with all due respect. And it's like, yeah, whatever you said is about to be not super respectful, right? So I just no, I don't think they're built for the back half. I love the fact that this is not just like, hey, I don't think their roster is good enough to compete with that. I don't think that they are basically man enough to finish that. And let me just go off on one part of this too. This is the main thing I have to say about this. I cover the SEC and I've covered it. This is my 9th year doing it, almost a decade of doing it. I feel like I've seen a ton of great teams. I've seen a lot of this and that, a lot of great players, a lot of great hype. I've made some bad calls. I've been wrong before. I've been wrong on this show before, right? Especially in basketball season. We don't have to get into that. But like, bad takes are going to happen, right? And we all think we know what we know until the games actually start getting played. This is talking season. It's going to happen. If there's one thing I know more than anything about the media and about coaches when it comes to the preseason stuff, about going into next year, there's not a ton of going out on a limb and saying, hey, I think this team is going to be like way better than people think. Most of the time, what you see, and this is the perfect example of this, is the teams we're most familiar with, especially the teams we're most familiar with that are good, is where you see a lot of the projections and this like safety pick and safety like projections kind of take place. And the team I'm pointing out more than anything is Oklahoma. Okay. If you talk to anyone coming into last season, coming into their first year in the SEC, Oklahoma coming off years and years and years of being they are a college football blue blood, point blank period, from the beginning of the sport to where it is now. They are a college football blue blood. They had not won a national title, I don't believe, since like 2003, I think, when they split it. Let me look this up real quick. Oklahoma national titles. They are a very good athletic department. They win in a bunch of different stuff. But when you talk about like from a football standpoint, they have, let's see here. They haven't won a national title since 2000. I was wrong, 2000. Okay. They have 7 total national titles, but they've only won 2 since 1975. So they've won 2 in the last 50 years. They're still a blue blood. They did a ton of winning in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all that kind of stuff. And they've also been a team that's been at the forefront of our attention and at the precipice of the greatness at the sport. Heisman Trophy winners, appearances in the college football playoff, all those things they have done a really good job of. And before kind of letting Texas back into things, well, NIL really did that, but being in a situation where they were kind of dominating the Big 12 and dominating Texas for years and years and years, they've been a really good program. I understand the idea of saying, yeah, Texas or Oklahoma going into the SEC, they're going to be really good. What I don't understand is when you compare South Carolina and Oklahoma, and you saw it last year. If you go back and look at the actual podcast we did and videos we did from that week of that game, because I said it from the first day of that week. I said the wrong team is favored. Oklahoma is a 4.5-point favorite going into that week. I think starting that Monday. By game time, South Carolina was favored by 1. I said it from the beginning of the week. The wrong team is favored here. This offensive line for Oklahoma is really bad. South Carolina's defensive line and the way they rush the passer is maybe the best in the SEC, if not the country, all those things. I understand with all the stuff and the history of Oklahoma why you're looking at them and saying, man, they're going to still be, of course they're still going to be great going in the SEC. Who cares what the schedule is? Blah, blah, blah. Like, who cares who the quarterback is? I guess my question is, like, I understand where it comes from. I guess my bigger question is why? Because when you look at South Carolina, we're just looking at real factual information. Lenore Sellers is the quarterback at South Carolina. Lenore Sellers is going to be, I think, the best quarterback in the SEC. I think he's going to end up in New York. That's just me. I think he does more things and gets you into more situations, positive situations, than any other quarterback in the country because of what he's able to do athletically and also with his right arm. Okay. All I've heard this entire offseason, John Mateer is going to come in and light the world on fire for Oklahoma. Okay. I heard the same last year with Jackson Arnold, former 5-star, top 10 recruit nationally. I mean, consensus, top 10 recruit nationally. Look at all the receivers they have coming back, blah, blah, blah. Granted, they all got hurt. Of course, they've recruited well at the offensive line. They're going to be great on defense. They got Brent Venables, man. Brent Venables, of course, they're going to be great on defense. They were terrible. Like, here's the thing about Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns. And just like in 2021, when Texas A&M, who was an 8-4 team that was not very good, but they beat Alabama, just like that same situation, Jimbo Fisher was able to ride that momentum into recruiting with his boosters, get himself a little extension, and give himself some more breathing room. People forget, it wasn't the $75 million that he got up front from A&M. It was the fact that he got like an extension that totaled $122 million while he was there for 10 years, or while he was supposed to be there for 10 years, after beating Alabama. He used that as like a parlay into more job security for him, a little bit longer leash on how long he was going to be there because they were already pretty frustrated. Like that is what Oklahoma has done with Brent Venables. This is not a good program. This is right now, they are not a good program in the SEC. All time, sure. I don't give a blank about all time. I'm talking about 2025. There's a ton of programs that you can line up against South Carolina and say, you know what, all time, way better than South Carolina. If you lined up South Carolina all time where they stood in the SEC, I don't know if it's in the top 10 compared to the rest of the league. I mean, I'm not saying that to be rude. I'm saying that I think that's probably factual. I don't know if they're a top 10 all-time program. But right now, I think they're a top 10 national team. And that's what's important. So it's confusing to me how we fall for this same crap every year of saying like, man, South Carolina, I know what they just did. It's Shane Beamer again doing more with less, arguably more with less than any other coach in the SEC, and doing a great job yet again. Recruiting trail, the portal, evaluating talent, getting them on campus, developing talent, pushing them off into the NFL. There's a thing we're going to do a show on later this week about the one thing that I think that they have more than anything. That the SEC, hold on, we got a text from the boss. One thing that we have that South Carolina has more than anyone else, maybe in the SEC, is continuity. Year over year, like what they've kept at their coordinator positions and their coaching positions. I know that they lost Dowell Loggins, but you got Mike Shula, who was under him, and Mike Shula, from a wealth of knowledge and like, experience standpoint, it's way more than Dowell Loggins. Keep in mind, not a lot of us wanted Dowell Loggins here a year ago, halfway through the season. He crushed it the final 6 games. But like the continuity you have here, there's all these things that you look at when you're objectively, if you were looking at 2 teams, and I know I'm on a soapbox here, I fully get it. I appreciate you guys listening. But if you're looking at 2 teams and say you're looking at Texas and Georgia, right? And you're like, okay, well, let's look at this. Like, who's got the better quarterback, right? Like, well, probably Texas, even because they have this person coming, or like, with Arch Manning versus this person. Like, Arch Manning's played a little bit, at least in this league, so we can say that more than Gunnar Stockton. Okay, all right, who's got the better coordinator? Who returns more experience? Who's got more continuity in their coaching staff? Who's got more recent experience? Who's got the head-to-head matchup when they won the past couple years? And if you were looking at those 2 teams, you look at it and you use all those things to figure out, like, hey, who's better here? I don't know. Probably the team that won twice against Texas last year, Georgia, right? Probably the guy who's the better head coach that we've seen is a better head coach during the sample size, Kirby Smart. Shane Beamer's a better coach than Brent Venables. Shane Beamer has beaten Brent Venables like a drum last season. Shane Beamer has arguably not just a good quarterback coming back, but arguably the best quarterback in the country coming back. If you were putting up those pros and cons or side by side trying to figure out which of those elite teams was the most elite, all the boxes you were checked are all the boxes that you check for South Carolina versus a ton of teams on this year's, I've ripped the magazine, on this year's schedule. This year's schedule. Not like, so what we're doing, it's I guess the best way to put it is this. We are judging South Carolina based off all this old data and old crap that you have kind of attached them like an anchor and been like, I don't know. There's not a huge sample size of success there when you look at, like how many, they had that good little blip in 2011 to 2013, but outside, yes, last year they did pretty well to start the year or to close the year. Sure. But like Oklahoma, man, what do you have to say about Oklahoma outside of Oklahoma as the brand? And I'm using that as a specific example because I think it's the same as Ole Miss. I think it's the same as A&M. I think it's the same as Clemson right now. You've beaten Clemson 2 of the past 3 years. You went into Bryant-Denny last year and barely lost that game by 2 points. Ole Miss, they drubbed you. Now you got a revenge game where you're going to there, and they don't have Jackson Dart. They don't have all those receivers. They don't have what's his name at running back. They don't have that entire defensive line they had a year ago. Like, we're judging South Carolina based off of all of their previous season's lack of success. And at the same time, we're judging all of these other teams based off of their previous seasons, not only their success, but then, that's just going to continue. Their projected success based off of it. And it's stupid. It's just stupid. That's the best way to put it. All right. Promise you that's the end of the rant. I promise you that's the end of the rant. And I really appreciate you guys listening. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of other things I think we're not talking enough about. And I promise I'll calm down. I won't yell. All those things. But make sure you stay tuned when we come back. Locked on Gamecocks continues right after this break. Boy, Oklahoma caught a lot of heat in this one. Caught a lot of strays in this episode. I apologize. Actually, I don't. I really don't. But speaking of strays, do you ever see where your money goes astray? Seamless transition. I want to talk to you about our friends at Monarch Money. Now, you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth, okay? Listen, what was one surprising thing you noticed when you started tracking your last year's money before you paid your taxes? Like, I'm like asking you. I tell you what, my biggest thing, I had no idea how much I was spending on things like to-go food or dining in, or even Instacart, ordering groceries, where I feel like I'm being responsible because I'm meal prepping, but getting the food delivered to the house just because it was too hot, or I didn't want to go outside, or I wanted to hang inside on a lazy Sunday. All of those things happen. I finally started tracking that with our friends at Monarch Money. And I tell you what, again, there's nothing that has been better for me, especially when I'm saving up for a pretty big purchase, I can't talk about it on air, than the help of Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Let's close out today's show with this. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're not talking enough about. I'm going to give you a couple more things I don't think we're talking enough about, and a couple more players. Man, the more I look at it, this secondary, I just think it's going to be one of the best in the SEC again. And I know they lost Eamon Worry, but they still returned so much. And I think even me, I kept looking at the loss of Eamon Worry with a kind of an idea that, I don't know, that they don't seem to have as much experience returning because they lost a 3-year starter and a guy that I thought should have probably been a first-round draft pick. But I tell you what, the more I look at it, you're talking about returning 3 to 4 starters back there. And there's one guy that we haven't talked a lot about, primarily because he missed spring. But Bakari Swain, I just feel like Bakari Swain is going to end up being a guy in this secondary that is so much better by the end of the year than we realized. Okay, Jalen Kilgore's a guy that gets a lot of the pub, but Bakari Swain, a kid out of Carrollton, Georgia, I believe it's Carrollton High School, which is a phenomenal school. They've turned into like a state power in one of what is the best states in the country for overall talent and recruiting for football. I mean, a lot of sports too, to be honest. But there's so much talent in this secondary that we just don't talk enough about. And you talk about like who is going to play? DQ Smith is going to be back. 34 starts, right? 34 starts in his career. Judge Collier, guy that led the team in pass breakups a year ago. Jalen Kilgore. That's a guy that we talked about, I said, as a breakout player. I think he's going to end up being a household name by the end of the season. But I also think that's a guy that people are going to shy away from. So when you shy away from a guy like that, then you have to throw towards guys like Bakari Swain. Bakari Swain is a guy that I don't know how he's going to look. He fits the typical prototype of what they've changed about this secondary room, which is we're not going after 5'10", 5'8" guys anymore, or 5'10", 5'11". It is 6 feet and above, and he fits the mold. He's 6'1", 190. I told you the average size of these defensive backs now, it's right around 6'1" and 195 pounds. He fits that. If you're going to go away from Kilgore, right, or you're going to go away from DQ Smith, you're going to go at a guy like Bakari Swain. And there's one thing that this guy has that I think is probably the most important thing you can have as a defensive back. And it's not height, it's not speed, it's none of that. Confidence. This kid plays with so much confidence and so much swagger. I think today. We're recording this on June 25th. That is my pick for today. And we'll continue the series throughout the summer. But that's a guy we're not talking enough about. Brandon Siss might be a guy that comes in there and plays too. But I think this secondary in general is going to be so much better than people think. I think it's going to be the strength of the defense for sure. But that's a guy right now, Bakari Swain, that we aren't talking enough about. But I think during the season and season's end, we're going to be talking a lot more about him. So that is all for today's episode. Man, I appreciate you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday, whenever you listen to this. Go about your day. And we're almost at the halfway point of the year. What the heck is that? We'll be back tomorrow with another episode as well. Make sure you're tuning in for the squad shows. We got a good one coming up this week as well. And until then, go Cox.